hey, if we tell our people what's really going on, it makes us look weak. No, the vulnerability is a leadership strength that is untapped.
This is Le Podcast on Emerging Leadership. I'm your host, Alexis Monville. Today, I am joined by Marcel Schwantes, a speaker, executive coach, and author who has spent over 2 decades helping managers evolve from being mere bosses to true servant leaders. Hey, Marcel, how do you introduce yourself to someone you just met?
I would say it like this. I'm a leadership coach who teaches leaders how to become more human. And if you're a CEO of an organization, it's to teach your management team or your executive team how to become more human.
Human leadership is more about being human than title or rank. In your observation, what is the biggest barrier that stops leader from making that shift today?
Yeah, I think a couple of things on a more personal or personal interaction basis. It's ego, right? We want to be in control of our destiny, our outcome. And I think externally is that we have so much pressure now to actually produce short-term results that we are not thinking how to create an environment, whether it's in your workplace or in your business, an environment that actually is sustainable for human beings to do really good work. So I think that's the two reasons that I can think of. There are many more, but those are the ones that really surface for me.
So this is very interesting because what would that mean for people to do their best work in a sustainable way? What do they need? What kind of environment they need?
I have tracked so much research, Alex, that points to workplaces that are led by people that don't put people first. So managers that don't value people as much as they should, because the focus, the pressure to please shareholders or other stakeholders, who whatever business you're in, if you're government, education, private or nonprofit, you're going to have pressures to serve other people that may write your check or pay your bills, right? And so I think that we lose sight of what it means to lead in the 21st century. Leaders need to provide an environment where people are connecting with one another. I know this is a very overused buzzword, but they have to create psychologically safe workplaces so that people are more open to collaborate and more open to express uncertainty and maybe even concerns about direction, and we're not sure about this. So in these environments, these human-centered environments, it's safe for people to, show their humanity in that sense, and that they're not going to be reprimanded by a boss who does not welcome opinions or feedback. And so for me, that's really flipping the script on a lot of these toxic workplaces where people have no voice, they have no say, they are not heard, they are not seen. And I point all the reasons this is happening right back up to the top, so that we have to understand that it starts with leadership, right? Everything relies on having a strong leadership team that has a vision for putting their people first. And when you have that in place, then you can create the conditions necessary for people to do their best work.
And some people currently live in high pressure environments with tough competition and all those things, and they want high performance. Do you see that on the opposite scale, or does high performance can coexist with all what you said before?
Yeah, I think high performance can definitely coexist with human-centered workplaces, because you're still holding people accountable. You're still holding them accountable to excellence and to performing at a high level, right? But you're not at the expense of leaving them to their own devices and without support and without being heard, right? So I think that there's a really good balance of leadership, and I'm borrowing from servant leadership, where you have the servant part of leading, which is to take care of the people first, but not at the expense of making sure that they are still held accountable for results, because at the end of the day, we still want results, right? But I think that when you invest enough in people and grow and develop them and take care of them, that's going to translate right down to their performance. And to me, that's not the reason why you do it, but that's going to naturally create some really good business outcomes, I think.
Excellent. You are also the host of a podcast. Can you tell us the name of the podcast and why you picked that name?
Yeah, and by the way, there's there's some news here, because I just changed the name. So let me tell you what the name used to be. And so between 2019 and just literally a month ago, I hosted the Love in Action podcast. So how do I get that name? Guest number 3 on the show was Ken Blanchard, who's written a gazillion books on management and leadership. And I asked Ken, he's a big servant leadership guy, right? And I said, Ken, how would you describe servant leadership? And I'll never forget the line. He says, Marcel, servant leadership is love in action. That really stuck with me. And so I borrowed from Ken. I give him full attribution for the name of the title of my previous podcast. So I took Love in Action. And love in this sense, for those of us that might be misinterpreting, what does that mean? There's no place for love in the business world. Love here is borrowed from agape love in the Greek sense of the word. It's backed by action. It's not a squishy feeling or emotion. It's not love for maybe your spouse, partner, or your children, or your dog, or your favorite sports team, right? It is love that is backed by action. And so that, I know I'm jumping forward a little bit here, but that's how I created the framework for my book. But yes, so last month I decided to rebrand the podcast. So now it's just called the Marcel Podcast, but we still bring thought leaders, authors, scholars, and leadership experts to talk about love principles.
Okay. I didn't pay attention to that. My bad. But I wanted to touch on love, because for a long time, I was trying to help people see that if they are reacting from fear, they are in survival mode, they are missing those connections between people. They are defensive. They want to prove their point. They cannot build together. They are alone, basically. And what I was looking at is okay, the opposite of that, what it is. And in my head, it was always, okay, that's love. That's what wants to happen
Yeah.
through you. And when you are there, then you can be curious, then you can ask questions, learn about other people, learn about other perspectives, build shared results, and so on. But I was always afraid to use love in a business setting. So I was trying to go around that, saying, we speak about appreciation, appreciate what is here, and being curious. And I was always a little bit shy about it. With
Yeah.
some people, they told me, oh, that's love. And I've said, oh, cool. With
Right.
some
Right.
people, it does not work as well. So I was very curious how you get there. So that's, thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if you look at Amazon book titles, there are close to now 50 books by business authors that talk about love in business, love in leadership. So I think the topic is starting to enter the business lexicon where people are less afraid to use the word love. And I think that's keep we need to keep creating conversations like this to kind of also dispel fact from fiction. There's a lot of misconceptions and misinformation around leading with love, right? People jump to all kinds of different wrong conclusions and bring religion and things that really aren't applicable to the day-to-day environment in our workplaces.
And so we are a few kilometers apart, a few miles apart, if you prefer, on two different continents. How does it work for teams who are also remote or hybrid when there's no physical proximity? How they build that connection you mentioned before?
In a remote sense,
Yeah.
I don't think the requirements for leading with love or becoming a more human-centered leadership changes because you're working remotely. It just means that you may have to work a little extra hard to make sure that the conditions that you would create to get high engagement and to make people feel valued in a face-to-face environment, you need to figure out how to bring that into a remote setting. But the point is because of the distance and because we're so dispersed geographically and things are so digital these days, is never to forget that human beings still need to be valued, seen, heard. They need to feel like they belong. They need to feel connected. Okay. I know I'm giving you cliches, but it's true. It's true. We are wired, I believe, at the core of our humanity to be around other people, to connect with others. So in a remote sense, how are you going to make that happen, right? What kind of rituals and norms do you want to start practicing and implementing as a culture to make yourselves unique when people are, I don't know about France, but here in America, we have a really big loneliness problem. And here we are connected to our devices more than ever before. And yet we still feel lonely. We still have a mental health crisis. And so we need to reimagine what does it look like in a remote setting to actually not forsake humanity, but to bring humanity closer together when the only means to do it is over a computer screen.
Yeah. And maybe that's also when you're already distributed or remote, maybe you need to acknowledge that we will need time together in a physical setting.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
lots
one
of
of those ways.
companies, they do get together, absolutely. And they'll have their offsites 3 or 4 times a year. And that should be a requirement of the job for people to make sure that they know that you're not going to be hiding behind your screen all the time, right?
One part of your work was trying to help people to go from boss to leader. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so many of us are, boy, now I'm really going to speak the truth here. There is, there's a shortage in leaders rising to, you know, rising to the top and moving up corporate ranks. The younger generations before me now are, we're talking about the Gen Zers and maybe young millennials are less and less inclined to want to be leaders. And so we're going to, in another 10, 15 years, we're going to be in trouble. So we need to start identifying leaders and developing leaders early on, but not just, we're talking about developing leaders to understand what it takes to, what are the metrics of great leadership, right? We have the business metrics that every leader is responsible for, right? You got top line, bottom line, customer retention, whatever your metrics is for your business, your KPIs, that's still important. But where we fall short is we are promoting individual contributors to leadership roles who don't have the mindset or the typology even to lead other human beings. And so you might get a great individual contributor, a rock star, promoted to a management role, and then people systems start to break down, morale starts to go downhill, engagement goes downhill, right? And so we have to look at, okay, who are we not only identifying, but what's the criteria that gets people to get promoted these days, right? So we need to flip the script from boss to leader, because boss is no longer relevant, or it's no longer sustainable in today's human-centered workplaces, because bosses, if you look at bosses historically, they've been all about themselves, right? Do as I say. They've been command and control. They've been micromanagers. They have been only thinking about the shareholders, if you're in one of those companies, at the expense of people. And so I think from boss to leader is really revising your inner script of what you feel leadership is and what it takes to be a good leader. Okay, so it's a good balance. You still need management principles to succeed as a leader in the business world, but too many people have maybe the intellect, the drive, or the charisma and maybe that's why they're promoted to the job, to the role of a leader or a manager. But then they start to show their true colors, and that's when you see systems break down and the lack of engagement, et cetera, is the people side of the business suffers. And so we need to develop the people side of the business in others to truly understand human performance, human development. I think that's my very long answer to from boss to leader. We need to create less bosses and more leaders.
Yeah, and I love that. Means looking at other things, that simplification of what a business is, that is returning value to shareholders, because it's a simplification, it's fairly new, and it's not what a business is about. A business is to create value to their clients or their customers, and probably to do that, you need the people to be able to do their best work and to love what they are doing.
Yeah.
And then the rest is a byproduct in a way.
Right. And wouldn't you agree? It seems like common sense, right? You want your business to do well financially and have greater customer loyalty. why wouldn't you take care of your people first who are doing the work that's going to create more value for your customers and for your brand reputation, right? Take care of the people inside first. Because, and by the way, here's a correlation of research. You probably know this, that it's a known fact that when you take care of your employees doing the work, that's going to create more impact on the customer retention side. So the experience is going to be that much more positive, and that's evidence-based. The better the employee experience, the better your customer experience is going to be. It's directly linked.
So basically, we are in a lot of organizations doing things in the opposite direction. And we are basically, we want to get the best return. We want to get the best customer experience at the expense of the employees. And it's basically taking the things completely backward.
Right, right. And then leaders wonder, why is our turnover so high? Start with first, who do you have as immediate managers and how are they treating their employees? And sometimes it's not the middle manager's fault, right? Because they are being told what they're getting their orders from above. So the whole reason why people systems and break down may be because of who's sitting in the C-suite.
But when you enter a place where this is not there, we are still with bosses and we don't have that kind of thinking. How would you enter that space trying to influence? I don't know what is the right word, towards a more human leadership.
Yeah. If you are oriented to be more of a human-centered leader, and you happen to be in a business environment where the people at the top don't welcome that, you can start with your own team. If you have a team of 3 or 5 or 10, and you want to influence up, start being a human-centered leader within your own sphere of influence, right? Your own team. Mm-hmm. And here's what I found is that I'll just share with you one client organization that I coached. It was exactly that scenario. It's like I had that one manager that totally was bought in, belief was there that human-centered leadership or servant leadership was the way to go. But nobody else bought into it because you had the wrong people at the top who were constantly fighting and pulling in different directions and only thinking profit, not people. And so I said, okay, don't wait for anybody. Go ahead and start being a human-centered leader. So he did. And the results were very noticeable because his engagement scores went up, his employee retention went up. There was less absenteeism because absenteeism is, I don't want to go to work today because I hate my job and I hate my boss, right? So I call in sick. There was less of that because people wanted to be there and because they appreciated the environment they're in, and there was synergy, engagement, right? And that's because the boss, that one person, started the chain. And guess who took notice of his numbers? When his retention went up and people in his department were performing, people in the executive team started to take notice. And they wanted to find out, why is this manager's numbers so much different than other managers, right? And so they began to question, and then that created new conversations about, what's happening in that person's department? He does things a little differently. And so senior leaders took notice. And so talk about influence, right? Yeah, you influence the people around you, but what about influencing people up? And so that created more opportunities for other departments to jump on board as well and welcome a human-centered approach. That's because of that one person that was courageous enough to start on his own without waiting for approval from the top.
This is inspiring. I love it, and I have to admit it's inspiring and it's very important because, as you said, you spoke about loneliness, you spoke about mental health, you mentioned psychological safety earlier. Yeah, it's probably can start with the people who are close to you in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach those topics in any organization you're working with?
How do I approach it? Usually they come to me first. And then so people have to be open to the idea of putting people first in order to create value and results. And so it becomes easier when the leader, manager, or CEO is already a champion for human-centered leadership. Because what you don't want is having to convince somebody that is oriented completely the opposite direction. Having to convince that person is to adopt a human-centered approach when perhaps they have been a boss, a top-down autocratic boss for so long. It's a tough transition, really tough transition. And I don't, I pick my clients carefully to make sure that they have an understanding of what they're getting into when they talk about we want to create a culture that is more human-centered. Okay, what does that mean to you? And because I want to be able to listen to make sure that they really know what it's going to take so that this thing doesn't blow up, right? If they have a misconception of what that is, right? Because a lot of times, you read about it in the media and you listen to a podcast, you watch a TEDx talk, and you're like, hey, this is cool. We need to bring this to our organization. And yet your inner orientation, your natural tendencies is still to squash people, right? So it's like, I want to make sure that it's not surface level ideology or surface level impressions that they're having that XYZ competitor is a human-centered workplace, therefore we need to be as well. No, it takes belief first, right? Why do you want to be a human-centered leader or organization? That's the first question I always ask. And I really tune in to make sure that they have the right priorities in place.
It's fascinating because then we have that idea of they need to believe, and they will probably need to change the way they behave. So as you mentioned before, it's not only about managing others, it's about managing oneself. So do you feel it happens often that they realize that it starts with them, or at least they are part of the picture? It's not only the other people.
Yeah, I think that once they realize that, okay, what has worked in the past is no longer sustainable. What I picked up from previous bosses no longer work in this age of connection, belonging, and once they kind of get past that, I think it's an easier transition. These leaders point back to their values, their value system. And so many of them realize that their outer success, all of the output is no longer congruent with who they are internally, their inner self, their values, basically. And so that's a real shift. And I've seen it. It's a big aha moment for a lot of leaders to realize, whoa, I am no longer living or working or leading through my core beliefs and values. And so there is that disconnect. And so they begin to reinvent themselves through self-leadership. What does it look like for me to live through more honesty, more integrity? What does it mean to work in places where I may have to be the bad guy because I'm speaking the truth to power, right? And it may not be, I may not be the most popular person when I speak my truth, right? And that's very human centered, right? You don't beat around the bush. And I'm using all these American cliches, by the way. You just have to speak your truth and let people know where you stand. And this is where we're headed, even though it's uncertain times. But I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. We're going to figure this out together, right? These are all things that I think brings you back to your own humanity. And so operating from your value system is really key to make that shift to leading others, to start leading yourself first, right? By your values in order to then make an impact on others.
So in a way, some people realize that for some time, maybe years, they were wearing the mask of the boss and at some point they realize if they really want to shift the whole organization, they need to remove the mask and be
Yeah.
themselves. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's funny that you use that removing the mask imagery. I use that a lot in my courses as well, because one of the things I teach is authenticity. How do we become more authentic as leaders? Talk about being human-centered. First, you need to remove your mask. So so many of us walk into a workplace and we check our real selves at the door and put on the mask to portray somebody that may not be who we truly are. And authenticity doesn't mean that you have now license to just tick people off and say whatever is on your mind. And no, that's not authenticity. That's being a jerk. Authenticity is being emotionally honest about things, about people, about what's going on in the business. So you communicate emotionally honest about the good things that are happening so that you celebrate as a team, but also the uncertainties, the things that may bring people fear. You want to be there to calm the waters and don't give all of these ambiguous speeches and messages. Tell people what's really going on, right? That's being authentic. They're going to earn your trust, or you're going to earn their trust, I should say, much more when you just tell them what's really going on instead of, I don't know, for whatever reason, because you want to save your reputation, or maybe you fear your boss that, hey, if we tell our people what's really going on, it makes us look weak. No. The vulnerability is a leadership strength that is untapped. And if we can figure out, if more leaders can figure out how to exercise this authentic vulnerability, especially in times of change, transition, uncertainty, God forbid we have another COVID, but that's when it happens, right? That's when we need to rise up and become more authentic. And even today, there's a lot of struggles going on, challenges going on, you know.
I have one for you. I have definitely one for you. You will love it. Or I already know that. I will drop just 2 letters because you spoke about fear, high expectations, AI. What does it mean for leaders? Human-centered leaders. What does it mean?
Yeah, we have to learn to embrace and adopt AI, absolutely. We need it. It's here to stay. But we also have to empower the people with the technology. And so as we have more AI initiatives, leaders have to understand that the people need to also, we need to take care of, if we want them to use AI, you need to set the right expectations for why they're doing it and really remove the fear that, oh gosh, my company is bringing AI, there goes my job. And if that's your ulterior motive for bringing AI, this is the wrong podcast to listen to. Okay, so you've already made up your mind that you're going to let go of 30% of your workforce because of AI. Yeah, the human-centered conversation is worthless here. But if you're going to bring AI, you're going to have to help the people adapt to it, know how to use it, and build this idea that you're not going anywhere. We just want to make you more effective, make you more productive, and make you a better human being with the use of AI. And we're going to teach you everything that you need to know. We're going to upskill you. We're going and even give you the freedom to experiment with prompts and redesigning your own work if it makes business sense. And then teach us, leaders, how do we do it? How do we become more effective, right? So that's creating, I think, more value and bringing humanity together with technology.
And we still have a lot of problems to tackle as human beings on the planet. There's not a shortage of problems to solve, so maybe that's a good thing. Okay, that was my AI question. I'm not going back to it. What is one question I should have asked you that I did not?
Yeah, I would say, boy, if I wanted to build a human-centered culture, and I'm a firm believer that this is going to work, I want to be a champion for this. What's my first step? That's the question, because a lot of leaders, and I'll answer that in a minute, a lot of leaders don't fully know what. We get so caught up in strategy, big picture stuff, that we forget about what's going on in the trenches. What are people experiencing? So the first step is to gather the data that you need to first understand your current reality. What are people experiencing? Go ask them. Have your managers ask them. Bring in a consultant if you have to. One of us, right? And to first understand here, okay, what are we dealing with? What are our barriers, our obstacles? Because you're going to find them. As soon as you start poking around, you're going to get similar themes rising to the surface. And that's your starting point right there. Because now you can go from, here's problems A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Now here's how we create a human-centered culture to address those problems.
I love it. Thank you for that really good question.
You're welcome.
And of course, thank you, Marcel, for having joined the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, and I was looking forward to it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Le Podcast on Emerging Leadership. I hope you found today's conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. If you want to dive deeper into the topics we discussed today, You can find the full episode transcript and all the references by visiting alexis.monville.com. Leadership is a continuous journey, and it is one best shared with others. So, if you took away something valuable from today's episode, please take a moment to share it with a friend or two who might also benefit from these insights. This is really appreciated. Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep leading. I'm Alexis Monville, and this has been Le Podcast on Emerging Leadership.